Any preference on which seat?
Probably. Is that good with you?
Yeah.
You can do. I've been trying for years. You look like you got it. Can you do it? You do it? The whistle. Yeah, but can you do it with a whistle? It's like a bird call.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Excited for our chat tonight. And this is a Startup Grind Fireside chat in partnership with SVB, who's hosted us at their beautiful space and provided the refreshments and appetizers here tonight as well. It's also in partnership with a couple other startup organizations, Boston New Technology, which has a big event group and community around the Boston tech community, and my other company, Prepare for VC, which runs cohort-based and individual programming to help startups get ready for their first financing round. And yeah, really excited to chat with Vishal tonight. And kind of the format we're going to go with is basically conversational style, fireside chat, covering everything from his background in entrepreneurship to company LinkSquares and how the story came about there, and also some insights into the AI ecosystem and a lot of the trends that are happening now. We'll also have plenty of time for questions at the end. But if you want to, jump in and ask a question, feel free to raise your hand during the event, and we can go to audience questions earlier. We're going to keep this pretty interactive. So, once again, it's a Startup Grind chat, which there's actually a big conference coming up in April. It's the Global Startup Grind Conference. I got to book my tickets.
I just booked mine yesterday.
Sounds good. Well, it'll be beginning of April in Silicon Valley. Definitely check that out. And then we'll be having about one event a month in the local chapter here as well. Really excited to get started. And if you want to give us, I could introduce you, but always better to come
to me directly.
So.
Thanks, Chase. Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for coming. Vishal, I'm kind of lifelong New Englander and grew up around here. Started my journey in tech maybe 10 years ago in B2B software. So I've been doing it for 10 years. Lots of great companies I worked at, like Backupify and Insight Squared. And now 7 years ago founded LinkSquares. And we're making awesome software, business software really for in-house legal teams. And so that's what the focus of the company is. We make an awesome piece of contract management software. It's got that AI component that we're going to talk about inside. We have about 400 employees, about 250 in this area, and about kind of 100 and change in 20 or so states. So kind of doing a hybrid approach. Happy to chat about that too. That's a hot topic. Raised 5 rounds of venture capital financing, $161 million. We did $100 million raise last year, and then a $40 million raise before that. So know a lot about this. LinkSquares is a company, tons of revenue growth, and I can tell you why. And about finding product market fit in the early days definitely is the key. We have almost 1,000 customers now, and companies like Fitbit and Wayfair and DraftKings and Smoothie King and the Boston Celtics and a whole bunch of others. And it's been an amazing journey. Learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, but happy to share more anytime.
Amazing. So what was, obviously LinkSquares is going really well now. Not your first kind of entry into entrepreneurship either. So
No, I
how
think
did-
my real first entry into it was this.
oh, all right.
I don't know, a
Wow.
lemonade stand. You know?
Yeah, I mean, how did you kind of make the leap from? You've had a lot of experience in the corporate world. How did
Sure.
you make the leap into starting your own thing?
Yeah, firsthand pain. Companies that get started have firsthand pains. I was one of those people. So I was working at Backupify. Backupify was bought by a bigger company, Datto. Datto came in and said, we're going to buy this company this quarter. And we have lots of projects that we need answered as part of this diligence phase. One of them was like, hey, you're a backup company and we're a backup company, and we don't use AWS. Datto said this, we don't use AWS. We have our own data center because they're a huge, giant company. And they said, well, I don't want to pay your AWS bill. So we were backing up like 3 petabytes or 4 petabytes a day, 3 times a day or something insane like that. So very expensive to pay for the luxury of AWS if you've used it at scale. Awesome service. And they said, hey, we want to move all your customers' data off of AWS and onto our data center. And which customer's contract says we can do that without their permission, right? And what are the edge cases? And so I was working in a role in operations, even though I have 2 engineering degrees. I kind of gravitated towards just like working in general business operations, marketing ops and sales ops and finance ops and whatever. I was like the odd project guy at a company. If you could be the odd project person at a company, it's an awesome job. I got work a lot with great executives that I'm still very close with now. A lot of the foundation for being an operator now and being the CEO comes from those days, learning a lot. And I was one of the odd projects I got, which was like, could we figure it out? Could we figure out what we agreed to on every single agreement we had ever signed? And we had, I don't know, 5,000, 6,000 customers, and not all of them had negotiated their terms of service, but a fair amount had, maybe in the thousands, either had negotiated our contract or we used their contract to work with like big brands. Like that's like a big brand thing they do, is they never use your contract. They always force you into theirs, and you spend 6 months trying to negotiate it to something like this could be used for buying toilet paper or cloud software. So it's like a procurement agreement. And so those variations create issues, right? But you can't get access to that information quickly. We were kind of typical fit of every LinkSquares customer. Disorganized, had lots of agreements, agreed to lots of stuff, didn't know what was inside. Real light bulb moment. So my co-founder and I sat desk to desk, like next to each other. He worked in like account management. I worked in ops, and we were both hearing about this. This was like a unified project for both, you know, I don't know, whoever could help. It was a real light bulb moment. It's like, wow, we're just like a regular old venture-backed company growing super fast. And why is this so difficult? And you begin to realize that, like, okay, we have one idea that is like, what's inside contracts do companies know? And we did not have a general counsel. So general counsel, like head of the in-house legal team, right? We did not have a general counsel. Enough people we knew, kind of smart people, nudged us towards like, hey, at bigger companies, they have this person. It's their responsibility. So I remember asking my co-founder, like, how many general counsels do you know? And he's like, 0. And I was like, me too. Okay, well, we need to talk to a whole bunch of them, right? And so we did the most sensible thing. We bought 25,000 emails off of a guy we found on Fiverr or Upwork that mined them off LinkedIn, and we paid by record. And we did the only sensible thing, which is the cold email. Hey, I'm Vishal. You don't know me, but I think your business is struggling with something that I just felt at another company, and do you want to chat? And this is what the thing is. And that was it. And we just started dripping emails. I think my email inbox now has like 700,000 emails, lots of emails, because I used to run all the nurtures to try to get people to try to just say yes. Just, hey, will you take a discovery call? We didn't have a product then, right? And putting the problem right next to the customer and making sure that those were aligned before we wanted to do the thing that I wanted to do, which is build software, because that's what I like to do. And so a year of just talking to general counsels, eventually enough people were like, yeah, this is cool. Like, yeah, I have all these problems. And then it was like, okay, how do we build something to solve it? But that was kind of how we got started. I'm not a lawyer, by the way, neither was my co-founder. So if you believe it, you know, 2 knuckleheads can build a company this size just on ideas, but with lots of validation.
It's an incredible story. And I mean, it's also not the easiest to cold email lawyers, especially, and like get them on the phone to hear about a new technology they're going to bring into like. How did you draft those emails to, get people excited about getting on the phone with you?
Yeah, I'm not a great copywriter. Luckily, my co-founder was like a history major, so like he's way better at writing than I am. But the emails were like real easy. It was 4 emails. We used the sequence tool. We used Tout app. That was the old tech Tout app. Got acquired by Marketo. They were the only provider that would sell us 1 license at full price. No one else would, not SalesLoft and not Outreach. But I got a chance to do the Tout app founders podcast, and I told him that story, and he chuckled about it. Right? That was a fun circling of technology we use. But yeah, the emails were short and punchy. Like, hey, I'm Vishal. I think you have this problem. Do you want to talk? Like, that's it.
Right.
It's like 4 sentences. And then the next one is like, hey, did you get my email? Like, I think you have this problem and we should talk because I think I have a solution that I'm cooking out. That was it. Some people were like, please never email me and I'm calling you the cops. Other people were like, when can you meet? Like, oh, next Tuesday, right? And that was like a year of doing that, right? Which was quite painful, but really important on the journey.
Yeah. And then so your market's general counsel within other companies, there's a lot of different industries and sectors that can go into. So like, where was the starting point of the types of companies that were most interested?
Yeah. I mean, some of the SaaS pundits will say you really need 10 people paying you, 10 customers paying you that didn't do you any favors and don't know you from a hole in the wall. And that's like the initial traction phase of the company. Can you get 10 people paying you money? You can have 1,000 people using it for free, but 10 people paying you money that it's not like your dad's golf buddies, business partners, uncle's cousin. Like, you don't know them. You couldn't pick them out of the lineup of people. So we started with 1 and get to 2 and get to 3. And this is all done through cold email, right? Eventually, kind of like over time, you begin to realize like we can keep doing this, right? And it's still kind of like a core strategy too. So.
And then the product, now it's an AI-driven platform. Did it start more manual, or what did that look like?
Yeah. So AI that we do is we can read executed contracts, right, using language processing algorithms, right? And the early days of the company was like, let me just give you a better repository that can deal with scanned PDFs, because scanned PDFs are a big issue inside of businesses, right? If you don't know what scanned PDF is, you print it out on a paper, you sign it, you put it back on a scanner, you turn it into a PDF, but the image is locked, right? It's a PDF of images, right? And once it's image locked, then you can't Control F search it, right? Because there's nothing in there to search. And so you have to convert it back to text. And so we offered that service. Give me all your contracts, I'll turn them into something searchable. Then we added like a search technology on top that you could search for pairs of words and strings and whatever, right? Like sentences and keywords and stuff like that. And that actually had some legs to it. People actually really liked it. But then enough people who were like seeing it were like, well, why do I have to search? Why can't the software just tell me what's inside it? AI can definitely do this. Well, AI could theoretically do this because it's even like an academic topic, right? Like a lot of this AI stuff going on in the world is like very academic, comes out of academia, right? Could you productionize it? On the day we started, I was like, I don't know, hopefully we'll hire a bunch of PhDs and AWS experts, they'll figure it out, which is exactly what we did. But the early kind of days of like understanding it was like, how do you build AI systems when you need a data labeling technology? Where is the data labeling technology? Back then it didn't exist. There are now data labeling technologies you can buy at like a subscription service, like a cloud model. But back then, 7, 8 years ago, there was nothing. So we built our own annotation system. That was how we got started. One of my employees, my second employee, is still with us. My first employee is still with me too, and my third and my fourth. But anyways, my second employee's friend was like MIT NLP assistant professor, adjunct professor or something. And I was like, yo, this is the greatest thing ever. Because then we plied him with pizza and beer. And I was like, tell me, how do you do it? Like when you get a new grant, how do you do it? He's like, we always start with building an annotation system, purpose-built annotation system. Like, well, that's great. We'll do that. And I was like, well, tell me how to build it. And he was like, sure. This is kind of how you should design it. And we went and built it. And then it just goes from there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you talked about some of the first employees that are still with the company now. Like, how did you kind of figure out how to expand from you and your co-founder
Yeah,
to everybody else you wanted to bring on?
yeah. Kind of gold mine was this thing that no longer exists, which was Startup Institute. And I don't know if you know
Oh, yeah.
Startup Institute, but I actually did the program when I was changing jobs. So I started my career with building hardware for the military. And so I did that for 5-6 years. That got bored. I was trying to move back to the Boston area and like rebrand my career like at 28, which is not like super old, but it's like I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't know how the internet worked. Like, really at a macro level, like I knew it, but at a detail level, it was like, all right. So I did Startup Institute. It was free. It was awesome. That's how I got the job at Backupify. And that's how we came up with the idea for the company. So a lot of things happened that way, but we found this vein of gold in these Startup Institute grads who were like hungry to just like get into it. And some of them were previously founders and trying to look at other companies. And so our first got 4 out of our first 5 hires all came from that program. And they just kind of had the right mindset. Like they knew the pay was bad and the hours were long and this thing was really hard, but they were kind of already pre-wired to do that. It's like a DNA of someone that is not a big company type person. They're like, I thrive in chaos. I love it, right? And we were all kind of at the same place in our life. Like, we're all unmarried and didn't have children. All of that changed now, but 7-8 years later. But we all just kind of banded together and we're like, we're just gonna figure this stuff out, right? And the pay is terrible and the hours are long, but I don't know. There's free Coors Light, we can pay for it, and it's like that's how it got started. And like that was like the real early days. Our first executive was our CTO, Eric, who again, recurring theme, hiring people that you've already worked with is really great, right? And my CTO, Eric, was the best engineer I ever worked with ever. Super smart, nicest guy, amazing, fantastic, the nicest guy. And I was like, hey man, all right, now's the time. Like, I think I need you, and you already knew that because you've been working with us already. I think I need you now. And he's like, all right, well, my wife won't let me leave what I make today. I was like, that's gonna be a huge problem. I was like, we need to raise capital then. And that's what we went and did. And then eventually did our first kind of angel round and raised 500K on a safe, and then did another bigger round, and then did our real seed round later. And it just kind of kept going after that. But yeah, CTO was first. I hired a product manager, Andrew, who then started off just like him working part-time with me, and now he runs the whole ship. The whole ship in engineering and product is in design. So it's been wild. It's been wild to do it. And then, adding in a VP of sales who's now CRO, the years after that, and then my CMO. But so much of my executive team, we all work together. Most of us actually. And it's a real playbook to how do you build an awesome exec team is leaning on people that you know.
Right.
And also people that were up and comers when you were an up and comer, and you started the company, and then a couple years later they kept on going in their career. They were already heads of marketing and heads of sales and heads of whatever, heads of technology or director level, and they're all looking for their shot at the big gig, right? The VP gig, the C-level gig. And it kind of, again, another great kind of thing that happened. We were all just banded together and all became the C-level team, all C-level team of first timers. And that was really great. And that worked for a while. And then we hired more experts. We're a legal tech company, so I hired a chief legal officer very early. Also use them in marketing, right? I don't have a Juris Doctorate, so I can't go and speak at industry trade shows because I'm not part of the crew. I'm just CEO of a scummy software company, I guess, to them. But my CLO can go anywhere, right? Tim was our customer. He was general counsel at DraftKings. So I recruited him out of DraftKings. I was like, hey man, I think it's time. He's like, I think it's time. So some of those things you just kind of get lucky on too. So.
Right. Yeah, looking where the product started, where it is now, what were some of the bigger changes that happened along the way?
Yeah, so we started off with the product we call now, which is Analyze, which is you load all your executed contracts that you've ever signed ever, and all the new ones that you will sign into a Google Drive, but it's way better than Google Drive, but a box, it's purpose built for legal teams. It's got the AI. We started there. That's also how we started fundraising too, which is the category we entered. And if you're all kind of thinking about entering into existing categories, our category was 25 years old. had gone through like 2 generations or 3 generations of different players who started kind of every 10 years. And so when we first got started, it was like, we're just post-signature contract analytics. And if you were using something else, like for the last 10 years, doesn't matter. What we have is so special, you will still buy it too. And that's like how we showed up in conversations. Like, oh, we use this other tool. It's like, yeah, cool, we're aware of it. We don't need to integrate with it, but you are losing the benefit of something that is like automated and reading your contracts and generating data on your behalf, which a lot of those players didn't have. So it's kind of like a new spin on it. Eventually, we built those, what we call pre-signature contract assembly technology, which my opinion is like way easier than inventing your own AI to run on AWS. Like that's like way harder. But once we had that kind of work in, then we aspired to sell an end-to-end system, which is exactly what we did. And so, but that was not until like 5 years into the journey, right? Where we actually started getting really serious, like 4.5, 4 years, 5 years into the journey, started getting really serious about saying, could we build an end-to-end system? And we're still on a journey, right? Our finalized product, which is the pre-signature drafting and versioning and collaborating, it's been in market for like 2 years. It's kicking ass. Like it's doing everything that we set out to product strategy was. Right. I'm telling you, not a lot of sophistication around how we did product strategy back in the day. It's like, hey, Andrew, you want to do it? He's like, feels right. All right, cool. Well, let's peel off 2 people and we can start building it now. Like, I mean, that was it. I mean, I don't know. People start companies all different ways. I mean, we're so sales led. Like we've always been kind of like customer led, sales led, revenue led. Like, how are we going to do it? Like, how are we going to find 100 people to pay us $25,000 each a year? Like, how are we going to find 100 customers, right? We always kind of focus on that, right? Growing the company through unit economics, like looking at SaaS metrics. And how do we do it? Right? How do we do it when it gets bigger?
Technical did you get in the customer meetings? Like, I feel like now, AI is pretty much on top of a lot of people's minds, but a couple of years back, it might have been like more of a scary concept to implement into their business.
Absolutely. If you've watched Silicon Valley, right? If you watch HBO's Silicon Valley, which I think is a fair representation of what my last 7 years have been. Actually, some of it is quite true. Pied Piper as a solution was very complicated initially until they found the chat capability was awesome, right? And kind of that UI of the original Pied Piper was like something that we were trying to avoid, right? So the craziest thing is you really got to build software for who your buyer is, and knowing who your buyer is at a really deep level is like so super, super important, right? Like, who is the general counsel? Like, what do they study in undergrad? English, history, French literature, like, they're not techie folks, right? But they supplement themselves with like legal operations that helps them buy and procure and implement technology. That's good. Knowing that if the system was too complicated, like the Pied Piper UI, they would totally bail on it. Because, I mean, think about it, like legal has been one of the last departments to actually have their time on cloud software, business software, right? Like finance has NetSuite and all the other Zora and all those other things. And obviously sales and marketing, very technical. Like they will try anything to make an extra dollar, right? Like I remember we were like early customer at Gong. If you don't know this call recording company, they record your sales calls and digitize it to text and then run AI on sentiment on how you handle interactions. I mean, amazing idea, right? They'll do anything to make a dollar. Even if they make one deal extra, that this technology, they'll try it, right? 12 months deal, easy for a sales team. Legal team, way different, right? They're not really big buyers of technology historically, even though that's changing. And just getting off the ground, understanding like, how do we continue to evolve this product into really what it is? It's a 30 by 30 pixel that has a green light bulb. And the AI acting, let's say the effective date, right? It's like this contract is effective between Jason and Vishal as of today's date, or the 1st of January, 2023. So the AI will pull out January 1st, 2023, and it'll put a little 30 by 30 pixel, like a little icon with a green light bulb that says we got it right. That's it. This whole thing, millions of dollars we've spent on AI research and running this really super complicated serverless processing pipeline in AWS that takes like crazy amounts of experts. It just goes down to a 30 by 30 size pixel icon and the thing that we extracted. And like we thought about it that way. There's a really interesting thing about human and machine interaction now in this day, right? Like, do you understand that a machine created this answer? Yes or no? Right. Like, if I'm going to get home to Winchester from here, I put into Google Maps. Like, Google is creating an estimate. They don't actually know how long it's going to take me, right? They're creating an estimate to get from A to B, right? AI made an estimate for you, right? Did you know it? Google Maps really doesn't tell you that, right? Maybe you understand it at a deeper level when you work in technology, but for this product, it was like, did you know that AI made an answer for you? And did you know that AI thinks it's right? And do you have the ability to tell the AI that it was wrong? Right? And so like that intersection of human and machines working together has been really fascinating to talk about for the last 5-6 years as we built it. But the 30 by 30 pixel is that's it. Like all this millions of dollars and years of my life committed to just putting the right pixel there and getting the answer.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, and then I think the feedback piece you mentioned was really kind of something we're seeing now more like, Chat GPT and other platforms where if it gets it right, you can use it and that's great. And if it doesn't, you can say, like, what would the answer have been? And, put your own recommendation back into the engine. So, yeah, I guess how are you seeing kind of some of the newer, like evolving, systems in this ecosystem?
I think ChatGPT is so cool. If you haven't tried it tonight, it is awesome. It's totally it's like I asked it to write a lullaby for my kid written in John Mayer style about robots. And it was great. It was actually pretty cool. Like it wrote this thing. It can do like, I don't know, programming questions or whatever. Definitely going to change access to information, I think, in the future. It's emerging technology, right? Like emerging technology is emerging technology. It could go really great and be kind of mainstream in everything that you do, or it will kind of go away like other stuff has, right? Come and go. I think what's cool is that it opens the conversation to people who should have now discovered what AI systems can do, right? Which should hypothetically make it easier for anyone building here in the AI space, and anyone working in and around it. Cool, yeah. So it should help at least with the broader general population interacting with AI systems. Maybe the general population doesn't know that Google Maps is actually using AI to tell you how fast it's going to take you to get from A to B. Right? But like only AI can really do that, and we know that, right, as technologists. But the average person probably doesn't, right? So at least we'll open the conversation that like, oh yeah, I've interacted with some of that stuff. Like my grandkids showed me that stuff the other day. It's like, hey, that's cool. Well, you had an AI interaction. Let me tell you about LinkSquares, right?
Right.
Yeah, it could be a great door opener just for the world in general, right? It's awesome stuff. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's just wild.
You feel like it makes the conversations easier with new customers that, you have this AI powered platform?
Yeah, well, we've been selling it for a long time, so we've kind of had to pre-open AI's amazing innovations. Yeah. We kind of had to deal with it on our own, like teaching people what it means. But it's easy to understand in our universe, right? It's like I got the answer right, or I don't. Yeah, I got the answer right, or I didn't get the answer right, or I don't know. Right? And so it's kind of like binary outcomes are easy to understand. Like, is it right or is it wrong, or is it right or do you not know that it's right? We don't know, right? And so I think it's been great to see the widespread adoption of it. It'd be really interesting to track how companies like Jasper doing so well, doing GPT based content creation, and I mean there's a million use cases that will be derived after this. It's interesting, or it'll just die out. Really depends on the world at large, I guess.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a question about
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, hi Vishal. I just graduated from MIT and I'm working in startup space. I'm not building anything personally, but yeah, I was just wondering. So after ChatGPT came out and got really popular, it's been a little while. So a lot of products on Product Hunt, like I check Product Hunt for like what's new products and all that. a lot of them are using ChatGPT in the background and just putting a web app on top of it, but they're not attributing the content creation or whatever that they're using ChatGPT for it. I came across a startup with a product launch, and they literally use ChatGPT. You ask a prompt and it will create product requirement documents. And I had to like go back to the founder and be like, give the credit where credit is given because they use ChatGPT. I used the same prompt on ChatGPT, gave me the same answers both on their product. So I'm just wondering, like, what advice do you have for like founders building based on a technology that they don't have control over the development of? So, like,
Great question. Definitely, proceed with caution for sure, right? Like, if everyone will embed ChatGPT in the next 5 years, if it does stick around and become mainstream, then standing out from others will be exceptionally hard to do, right? Because it's kind of like a level playing set, right? It's like, I'm an up and coming airplane manufacturer. Well, the thing that I never have to worry about is how the autopilot runs on an aircraft. I'm not inventing my own autopilot for aircraft because the FAA gives it to you, right? All autopilot is given on one single algorithm that they've invented, and it's, I don't know, 99.999 whatever percent, it will work every single time. And like, okay, now I'm an upstart airline. How do I differentiate myself against JetBlue? Well, it's like, okay, I got to do better snacks and better seating and more flexible route options. And it's kind of like you have to now focus your business on other things. Like, how are you going to differentiate between JetBlue and your new startup airline, right? It's like assuming you can go and manufacture your own planes. The autopilot piece is like probably the most important, right? The plane's got to fly. It's got to run on autopilot. That's humans, 99% of it is done by computer, right? And so knowing that, it's like harder now. I think the next wave of founders have to differentiate, like, why should I do business with you? And if everyone's technology is the same, to your point, right? You're typing in a prompt into ChatGPT, giving a common answer. It's going to repeat that answer back 1,000 times if it's asked the same way, right? Definitely proceed with caution, right? There are a couple founders in the room or like yourself trying to maybe explore it, right? There are very few silver bullets on this journey. ChatGPT surely isn't one of them, in my opinion, right? Now, what you can do with it, like an application like Jasper, it's like actually helping content marketers make more content faster, which is like, that's like a value of the software, right? Yes, we could use ChatGPT to make our blog posts faster and create them quicker, right? Or have better research on whatever topic we're trying to do. But I think it's going to push founders to really, if everyone on product, which is great. I haven't checked it out in a little while. I'm going to go check it out now. If everyone's trying to use this, then it's kind of like autopilot. Well, okay, we'll take that out of the equation of being a new airplane, maybe like a new airline company. It's like, okay, well, autopilot solved. Now what else? Oh, better seats, right? You got to think about other things to differentiate yourself. Again, business consumers, they buy brands, right? Like at the end of the day, everything you wear or buy is like a reflection of some brand you want to associate yourself with or not, right? Buy a pair of socks, someone in need gets one, right? Okay, great. Well, I'd rather buy my socks from that place than buy it from somewhere else where they just keep all the profits. Like, I don't know. It's like that classic kind of art of like, who cares? Like, why? Like, why you? Why are you going to be so successful?
I like that. Yeah, anyone else have any questions they want to ask?
Minimum 30 questions today.
Just kidding.
I guess a follow-up on her question, which would be, ChatGPT does not currently allow you to customize the way it interacts, but future or competing versions, according to OpenAI, will allow that. Would that be an interesting technology on which to base a company by doing customer transfer learning, or do you think that would be, or do you think that's like so close to being solved that we need to look at completely different issues?
It's hard to say. It's not available yet to do that, right? But you can imagine that there's whole ecosystems built on great technology, right? Like Shopify stores, right? There's a million plugins that you can plug in to your Shopify store to make everything better, right? Pop-up modals and exit banners and text message services, right? I think if it stays around, if people right now it's super buzzy, right? And like everyone's trying it, right? It's kind of like Bitcoin. Everyone was talking about it, right? People don't talk about it that much anymore, right? Because of what's going on. But if it can maintain its hype and then they can actually launch like an enterprise offering, I would imagine it would be very expensive. So it'll be limiting for people trying to get on it, unless they're trying to open source all of it. Again, I don't know OpenAI's plans for their future. I haven't followed it that closely, but assuming that it could be, you could gain a license to it, it'd probably be pretty expensive because who would give this away for free? But again, the tech world is all about open source. Some of the greatest technology, like Elasticsearch, is all free, right? It'd be interesting. It could be, again, technology rarely helps you make that company more successful. It's more like, are you solving people's pain points, and do they have a problem they're worth buying to solve, right? I mean, that's kind of at least in the B2B world. Consumers, I have no idea, like, what do 13-year-old kids love? I don't know. They love Snapchat. That's why it exists now, right, at huge scale, right? Business software, it's pretty cut and dry. You have a pain, I have a piece of software, it'll help you get rid of it. You're going to pay me money to use it, to get rid of it, or do the basic stuff, make more money or help save money, or be more efficient. I mean, that's it. Business software is just those three things. Going to help you make more money. That's all the sales and marketing products that exist in the world. HubSpot, Zendesk, whatever, Gong, SalesLoft, all of the outreach. Second thing is I'm going to help you identify places to save money, right? Saving money is a big priority in companies right now. So like the people that will hook up into your credit card and tell you all your inside the business, so you can be like, that we don't use, and someone go cancel it, or click a button and they'll go cancel it, right? Like vendor or procurement negotiation, stuff like that. And then the third is just like, if you use the software, it may help you with the other two things, but it will really just help you be more efficient, right? Like Slack doesn't really help us make more money. Slack doesn't help us save money. Actually, it costs a whole bunch of money. But why do we use Slack? Because again, it's that third category. It's like an efficiency tool that helps us collaborate, Slack is so great, right? It's like whatever. But those are kind of the three options you have. You build software for businesses, right? That's it. There's not a fourth category where it's like, oh, ChatGPT will help you do whatever. It's like buyers don't make decisions that way. They're like, okay, I have a problem. I want it solved now.
Can you walk us through your initial sales conversation, maybe first year of the business? I don't know if that goes before you raised your Series A, that could help us understand how you get to a better understanding of each of those aspects of sales, buyers' needs, and building those relationships.
Sure.
You had lots of cash.
Yeah. Question around early sales at LinkSquares. Well, pre-sales, there was 100 conversations with general counsels because we didn't know who they were. So that's like not selling anything. That's like, can I talk your talk? Like, can I talk about the things you care about? Do I understand what your pressures are inside your business? You do enough conversations like that, it's like you see the common arcs on like, everyone's having trouble with this, or this is how they all have approached this problem before. That's just like early background. Like, how do you go and figure out what's in all contracts when your CFO says, I need to know every contract that has termination for convenience tomorrow. It's like, wow, how would you solve that? Like, okay, we're doing it all manually. We're looking at every PDF one at a time, or we're hiring our outside counsel to do it at $250 an hour. It's going to cost like $25,000, or whatever. We're using something offshore. Like, kind of understanding like what is the state of the art current, right, for them. Then figuring out if software can be a replacement for the way that they're solving problems today. A lot of cold emailing and a lot of just like, hey, how's it going? I'm Vishal. Hey, thanks for replying to my email and not telling me to go to hell. Let's talk about what your pain points are, and like, let me give you a brief overview of the company. Like, we're building this piece of contract management software. I think it'd be really great. Like, then we just go into questions and answers. Like, right? Sales is. Who's worked in sales here? Yeah, a good part of the room. That it's not the stereotypes of like Alec Baldwin saying, always be closing, right? It's not that, right? It's working a process, understanding their pain, understanding the solution fit, right? It's a solution sale, right? And presenting how when you use this piece of software, it will solve your problems, and what are your roadmap of problems you're trying to solve, and what budget do you have to go solve it, right? So it's like understanding sales at a deep level is like, it's hard, especially if you haven't done it, right? If you haven't done it, it's real hard. It's probably the hardest part of the early stage of the journey. But I tell this to founders all the time, you cannot hire someone until you are almost at $1 million of recurring revenue a year, right? You cannot outsource this. Like at 500K, you can start thinking about it. 700K, I made the move at 700K. We had line of sight to get to $1 million of ARR, annual recurring revenue. I was totally comfortable with that. But I know so many people and conversations I've had, and that they're like, well, I'm not really good at it, so I don't feel like doing it. And I'm like, well, you don't get to make that choice, unfortunately. Sorry. Like, that's life. Like, if you wanted something easier, you should go like work at Oracle or something. Like, this is being a founder of a company. And 1 million people are going to ask you all these questions, especially you want to raise capital. You better know this stuff inside and out. Like, why did they buy? How did they buy? How long was the sales process? Did you do a proof of concept? How many demos did you do? It's like, if you weren't doing it, you would like blow up on your seed round. You never get the answers out, right? You just don't know, right? Not knowing is pretty dangerous in the early days. And also you have to like steer the product and like, hey, I've been on 75 calls. They all say the same thing. I think that's what we should build, right? You kind of need that, especially you get, to 10 employees or so. Yeah, and then it's like discover. I mean, we always do the same process. Like we do a discovery call. Are we a good fit for you? Like, forget about if you're a good fit for us. Like, are we a good fit for you? Like, do you have this problem? Are you actually trying to solve it or not? I'm not trying to actively solve it. Well, shit, then why am I wasting my time talking to you? Go talk to someone else, right? And then it's like, okay, we both opt in. You're trying to solve it. I have software you can solve it with. Sweet. But you don't get a demo on the first call unless we want to, right? It's showing the product. We got other better things to do now. But then show a demo. We do a free proof of concept, which actually really helped. So I would encourage you all, if you go out on your missions, to do a free proof of concept, because you have really nothing to lose. And if you can prove the value of whatever you're building in a free proof of concept, doesn't cost them anything. Sign an NDA between the two companies, easy, right? Vanilla NDAs are like easier. Sign them, 100 a day now, 200 a day, whatever. That's great. Again, you're trying to build trust in the buying process. Being a small company is just hard. It's just hard. It's just, you're an insignificant stain in the history of time, like compared to Google. Like no one even knows you exist, right? And now you're trying to convince someone to pay you $12,000 a year, $20,000 a year, right? It's like, it's a slow moving thing, right? The snowball starts very small before it starts moving down the mountain, right? But here I'm evidence that 7 years later, the snowball is gigantic, like in Indiana Jones, the big ball that comes out. Like that's like LinkSquares now, but it started off like a little tiny snowball that we were desperately trying to push down the hill that looks pretty flat back then, right? But it can be done, right? Early sales is fun. It's hard too, but those are the good old days. Yeah, hi, how are you?
Thank you, first of all, for sharing everything you shared thus far. You talked a lot about the journey from where you were to where you are today, but I'm interested to hear what does the next stage of growth, development, change look like in the organization?
Yeah. 400 employees is a lot, right? We hired 280 last year. Hiring 280 people in 1 year is hard to do. Getting them ramped up, getting them productive. A lot of the job changes as like CEO, it changes over time, right? Like what his question was, about the real early days, it's like, I'm the sales guy, I'm the implementation guy, I'm the support guy, I'm the product manager, I'm everything, right? I'm half of everything. My co-founder is the other half, and sometimes we're both of everything, right? Constantly. But then I have few jobs in the company as CEO now, but my first real important thing to do was hire a great executive team that everyone that works below them would want to work for them. So I need to pick a great leader who then will find great manager, director leaders who will then go find great individual contributors, and the pyramid works, right? But if I make a mistake on the people that work for me, then it's never going to work, right? So now I've done that, which is great. Got an awesome executive team. We've been working together for years now, know each other. We fight like brothers and sisters, but it's great. We spend time with each other and our kids now and all that stuff. But really what comes next is like can we be a best place to work, and what does that mean, right? When someone decides whether they want to join the company, do they believe it's going to be a great fit, right? Thinking about things like DEI, right? Like, which we never thought about in the early days, right? It was just like not a priority back then, right? It was like, will you join the company? You said yes. Come on, we'll give you a computer. Like, you can start tomorrow, right? It's like, but eventually, if you're trying to hire 280 people in a year, it's like you really got to be doing all the right things, which is great, right? But through the luxury of venture capital, you can go and hire all these great experts like HR leaders, recruiters, and find the right folks and have a more complicated interview process where people are stakeholder-led interviewing and all that stuff you got to grow up on. DEI is so important. I'm such a huge advocate for it because like now at 400 people, like DEI is really the mirror that people see themselves in the company, right? Like, I am a immigrant. I am a musician. I am an engineer. Like, can I find someone who's just like me inside LinkSquares? I would say, yes, you could, right? And like we have a strong like LGBTQ community inside the company also, right? Like that's really awesome as well. And we never ever like to grow the company to this big, like, oh, we're going to make all these topical Slack chat rooms, and we're going to force it down everyone. Hey man, you got to join the anime Slack channel, right? But they just started getting creative with like-minded folks. There's so many like-minded folks. Like we have a channel for like families. We have a channel for like soccer fans. We have a channel for like grumpy Patriot fans like me and whoever, musicians, and it just kind of happens, right? So a lot of what comes from this point forward is thinking about best place to work, DEI, creating those opportunities, right? Like I've kind of done my job, hire the people, right? My job is now more like, okay, here's what we have to do this year, not how to do it. Like now I never tell anyone how to do anything because I've hired all these experts who have then hired more experts who have hired more experts. Like it'd be a shame for me to be like, hey, can I teach the data scientists, PhDs how to do data science? Like absolutely not, right? Maybe back in the day, I would pry my fingers into different parts of the business, but not now, right? The job changes, right? If you can make it to this journey, the job's way different than when it started. Probably the reason why people go back to doing the early stage journey because it's fun, right? Going like 1 to 10 million at ARR is like really fun. It's a fun part of the journey. The job now is a lot more like financial metrics driven, right? And so I'm not an accountant. I haven't even taken a basic accounting course, right, in my entire life, but my CFO is like a wizard. And now I've gotten quite good at it, like reading P&Ls, balance sheets, doing forecasting. Like so much of it is financial driven. Again, I never worried about it when I got started. I'd be like, I don't know, we'll just figure it out. I'll figure it out. There's enough blog posts on how to read a P&L on the internet. But more likely, I'll just pay an expert and they'll just tell me how to. I was like, so what's important here? It's like, oh, these 3 columns. Oh, what do you think? My always question is like, interesting. What do you think? Then you learn, right? But I don't know. Really, I think we can be one of those pillar companies in Boston. To be honest with you, like, become a public entity. I think is still something I want to do. I don't see a reason why we couldn't, right, in the next couple of years to come, maybe 3 or 4 years from now. It can be done. It can be done. Things are harder now than they have been before. But again, smart businesses that are run well will survive hard economic times, right? And I, knock on wood, we're one of those too. So.
I like that. Yeah, and it shows kind of one of the themes of tonight was the human side of AI, and obviously, you have the tech platform, but you have hundreds of employees who just added on, and they're really like, the ones out there creating, selling, marketing, becoming the brand. And, when your customers call up, like they're not talking to the AI, they're talking to a human. So, I think that's really important that, put so much emphasis on building the right team.
Totally. I mean, I often give this advice to people. If you want to be like this, to have this job is like, I have to run 4 companies at the same time. There are 4 different companies inside LinkSquares. The first is the human company, best place to work, DEI, great career path, career laddering, fair pay. Like how do I get promoted from software engineer 2 to senior software engineer? All that stuff. You have to figure it all out eventually. You don't have to figure it out on day 1. But running the human side of the company is by far the most complicated, right? You're dealing with humans, right? Humans and emotions and expectations and whatever, right? The second thing is just running a company that it has financial metrics, right? Like we got a whole bunch of investors. We have, I don't know, 18, 19 investors in the company. Like dealing with that as a financial performance company, balance sheets and forecasting and burn rates and gross margin. And you're going to learn all this stuff pretty quick, right? It's a finance side of the business it's very complicated. You have to become a SaaS metrics expert, right? To really do this job. The third is like, we're a brand, right? We are a brand. How people think about LinkSquares externally is part of one of the jobs I have in the company. It's like where we show up at industry trade shows, and when people read about us on G2 Crowd, are we like top right quadrant, number one provider in the space, which we are now, right? A couple guys started a company, now is the number one contract management system on earth on G2. Like that's cool. Like, but how do you stay there, right? And then the fourth is like, if you take money from investors, we're like, right? Private companies that venture capitalists have invested in, it's like we're an asset class. We could be a mutual fund or a cryptocurrency or a piece of real estate. We are a private company that people own equity in, right? That they bought equity in the company, right? In exchange for cash we need to operate, right? So then there's like decisions you have to make about your asset, right? You fundraise because the value of your asset increases, right? You've increased the valuation of the company, AKA the asset, LinkSquares Incorporated, Delaware C Corporation, the value of it is increased, right? You've increased it, you are continuing to create enterprise value, as they call it, right? Or what the valuation of the company is when you're private. And so you have to run these four companies in parallel simultaneously. And decisions that are like, well, two of them are not going to go well out of the four, then you know it's a real hard decision. You're making like a lot of companies right now, Microsoft, Facebook, Salesforce, all of them who've done RIFs, like, you know, the four things of the four companies that I have to run, like they're in conflict with each other, right? The financial metrics are in conflict with the human, you know, the humans that have to be let go. Like it's a real hard decision in the company, especially when the humans are gonna detriment from a decision you make. It's a real hard decision in the company to make, right? You should know that, like, this is not going to be easy. You're not going to have a fun time making it either, right? And so, like, fundraising, like, okay, we raised $100 million, awesome, right? All four go into the everyone benefits category. But when you start moving things over to the other side, like, there's detriments, like you made some crazy bet on doing an initial coin offering and it didn't work, and you burned all the cash that you have, and so like there's a lot of downsides in that, in the detriment column, right? Like the financial performance is tanked. You spent all your money. You didn't. Your brand identity like got lost in this coin offering, and you caught the wave too late, and it's like things like that, right? You can start understanding why businesses have to make decisions because of those four things, right? You really have to decide on things in those four categories, right?
Yeah, I love that. No, yeah, I like the way you broke it down, and you know, it is like running four separate companies within. Yeah, I saw. Did you still have a question?
Hi.
Yeah, hi. My name is Laura. I was thinking about what you said about DEI and how you didn't think about it at all in the beginning, and now it's a real value and you see it as an asset to the whole business. Someone who's very way earlier, I'm wondering what lessons learned you have in sort of building it in earlier, and kind of what that transition looked like for you to make the shift that you're talking about.
Probably around like 20 people. Oh, sorry, yeah, DE&I, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, right? Probably around 20 people. It starts to be like come an interview topic, like it started to come up an interview topic, or like knowing that you only have one female who works for you in the entire company. It's just like, oh God, we gotta fix this, right? Like, kind of realizing that like you can't keep on going heads down. And as a CEO, like I have to be one of the people that have to like pop my head up and be like, yeah, this looks like a dysfunctional bachelor party right now. Like we're not going to build a big company this way, right? But I don't know, like kind of first 10, I didn't really stress on it too much. I mean, you're just like in survival mode. But as you get out of survival mode, and it's like, okay, we no longer have to worry about making payroll. Like maybe we'll be okay now. What are the next like more important priorities? But the sooner you do it, the better, right? I think we waited as long as we possibly can, and then it was great. Like did a big hiring class of lots of females, and like started making females part of like, okay, we have to interview a female for every single role in the entire company, no exceptions, right? At least one candidate had to be female in the hiring pool, and like bringing in other like underrepresented groups also to the hiring process. Like you're in charge of this whole thing. Like I am in charge of this whole thing, right? Hypothetically, but in actuality, yes, right? Like you can't do HR by yourself. Unfortunately, it's impossible. It's too complicated. There's too many legal things. Employment law, you're not an expert in unless you're an employment law expert, which would be crazy awesome. But it's too hard to do kind of haphazardly on your own. I'll read about it on the internet. When you're real, actual human beings, you have to, I could probably, as a lesson learned, have invested in at least like a fractional, chief people officer that could have just, helped us out a couple hours a week or something, right? And give us some basic frameworks, but that's exactly what we did. One of our angel investors was like, I know this guy, you should chat with him. I'm like, okay, great. And they're like, you ever fired anyone? I was like, no. He's like, well, that's coming. Surely he was right, like, a month later. And it's like, even doing that, like, how do you do like a real termination? Like, and like, what do you say? What do you not say? Right? Like, if you've never really done it, it's hard to know, right? You can't do it. It's DIY HR is just too hard. Right? So I probably would have done it a little sooner, but I think we did it soon enough, right? It's like, okay, we have an aggressive hiring plan. Trying to hire like 25 people this year. When the company started with 2, hiring 25 in a year, that's a lot, right? It's like, how are we going to hire 25 people? Okay, great. Well, what do we want to look like? What do we want us to look like in the company photo? I mean, it starts showing up. It's like, oh, the company photo looks like a bachelor party. Like I went on a bachelor party, it looks just like this, like my college buddy. It's like, we can't do this anymore. Like it's just, we can't do this anymore. Again, you have to change inside the company, right? You have to be the agent of like, we can't do this. We can't do this the way it's happening. Right? We got to be better than this, right? And now we have so much amazing diversity inside the company, right? And to hire 280 people in a year is like, it's really hard to do, right? Because they're more scrutinizing than ever before, right? About it, right? Do I want to work here? Are the people cool? Like, I consider myself part of this group or that group, or are there people like me here? And it's like all part of it now to build a big company, right? We always wanted to build a big company. I never wanted to sell it early. I always wanted to like go public. I mean, we always dreamed about that, right? So.
Can I turn that question around?
Sure, turn it
What are
around.
some of the values from the early days, the first 40, the first 50? You go, oh yeah, there's some things that we want to carry through over 400 or 4,000.
Yeah.
That your company still has that goodness.
Yeah. So the whole thing about writing the values of the company down is like super important, right? And we didn't write it down for a long time. It was kind of like an unspoken, right? But people like kind of knew it, but they didn't know it, right? I couldn't like put it up on the wall and be like, random employee walks by and be like, hey, what are the company values, right? Like, like they wouldn't know. We didn't do it that formally. But when we were actually trying to forge them and create them and write them down and put them on the wall and show them on every all hands meeting and like, this is who we are, it actually became a reason why we would let people go, because one of these 4, like we have 4, and so I'll tell you about them now, but like, it's real easy to understand that this person is a great person for somewhere else because you don't fit one of these 4. You're struggling with one of these 4. So like ours are like being like team first, right? So like, sometimes it's 11 o'clock at night and you got to do something for each other, right? Trying to close a deal on the West Coast. It's only 8 o'clock out there, right? Like they need something at 11 o'clock at night. Are you going to be the person that responds to their text, helps them, right? Or like anything else, like, hey, let me help you fix this and that. Like, oh, I fixed this issue last week. Let me help you. I'll tell you how I did, right? Just helping each other constantly, just like when we were 10 people in a small room, just helping each other all the time, right? Being customer driven, right? That's why we do this thing, right? We're just like a failed experiment if we don't have customers, right? We're like a hobby. We're just like wasting our time. I like my hobbies, but you can't make money that way. And then it's like, do what you say, right? Is another big company value for us, right? It's one of my big values as a human being, right? And a lot of the values are like the founders, like who are the founders and what do they believe in, right? do what you say is like operating with high accountability, right? Like if I say I'm going to get this, if I say, geez, I'm going to be here on time today, I will be here on time today, because that's like a core value, personal value for myself, right? Being accountable, showing up to these things, doing it right, doing it well, and then being all in, right? And if I had to track, terminations we've probably had over the last, say, 18 months, 2 years, not being all in is a huge problem, because the team around you would be like, dude, at 5:01, man, I couldn't find you. And we were like stuck on this thing. And like, I texted and called you like 7 million times. I hit you on Slack. I'm like, it's like, oh man, I don't work past 5. Like, oh, wow. We're in the middle of deploying this thing, and like, we needed your help on it. And like 3 other people had to go and pull your weight. Like, that would never work in the company, right? The crazy thing is they police themselves now. Like the employees police themselves, and when it's not working, they're quick to be like, I can't, we just can't. And here's all the reasons why, properly documented, but it just can't work. Because this person is not all in on like helping do whatever it takes. If you lose that kind of drive inside, like, companies don't make the journey all the way to 100 million of revenue and become public companies, because you need so many people bought into like doing this thing every single day. It's hard. It's still hard work. Even at 400 employees and 1,000 customers, raise all this money. It's as hard as it is when we were back in the early days, right? I just do less of it, which is even harder for me personally. But values are super important, right? We use a framework called EOS. We've been using it for a couple of years, Entrepreneur Operating System, which part of it is to do some of this stuff. You don't necessarily have to use it, but it's a really awesome framework that we're running the company on a little bit now too, right? Like, how do you do like, I don't know, weekly meetings with like the people that work for you? And how do you think about like your vision and your tracker on their vision? Like will you get to your vision, 1-year vision, 5-year vision, 10-year vision? Like making sure you set out with the right mindset, right? That you will get there, right? And today is one day closer to wherever you're trying to go, which is like, let's become a public company. Let's go deal with that. Let's go to $1 billion of revenue like HubSpot. HubSpot's almost like $2 billion of revenue. Like, can we get to $1 billion of revenue? Yeah, sure. I think so. It'll take a long time, but we'll make it, just year after year, day after day. The values are great though. It's good to write them down when it makes sense. And it's good to have them when people don't fit. You'll have a real tangible reason why. Then it's real easy. Like, sorry, man, I'll let you go. Well, not. I'll actually.
I got fired.
Mind if I comment on something you said for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I love the fact that you touched on like consistency and showing up, because I think like what a testament that you have 400 people who are like on Slack right now with questions for you, and you're here with all of us to share your journey. And ditto with you, Jason. Like you do so much community building in the startup space here in Boston. And for those I haven't met, Kristen from the SVB team, we, Britt, Sharita, work closely with startups here in Boston, and like 2023 is a choppy year. Founders need all the help that they can get. We try to do everything we can. Like if you are a founder, like please let's talk. We'd love to see how we can help out. I do want to, like, if it's okay, and feel free to wrap up, but we'll probably get kicked out of this space in the next like 20 minutes or so.
Cool.
So just wanted to say like thank you to both of you so much for being here, everybody, for making this community so amazing.
Thank you for hosting us, and all the great questions. And I kind of wanted to wrap up with you've given a lot of great advice and stories, and a lot of our audience is building earlier stage technology startups as well. So like, what kind of wrap up advice would you have for some of the startups like looking to get to where you are now?
Yeah, I think I've alluded to it. Do not rush to build the software, because building the wrong piece of software that like will not solve whoever you're trying to build software for, and if you didn't research it deep enough, you're gonna just waste a ton of time and or money and or both, right? And it's gonna be pretty demoralizing to build something that no one wants. So resist the temptation to build it too early. For us, that was like a whole year of talking to general counsels. Before it was like, I think we got it. No, let's do one more. No, okay. think we got it. Talk to 75, 80, 100 general counsels. I think we know what to go and do. There's a lot of ways to prove it out before you get there. Clickable prototypes have never been easier to make, right? Back in the day, they were actually quite hard to make. This was like in the early days. InVision wasn't even like super popular, 9 years ago, whatever. Now there's so many low code, no code builders where you can actually build something that can show the value. Do that. Don't build the big expensive web app that if you're not a web app builder will rat hole that you'll jump down into. And take advice from experts the day you're actually trying to build a web application. Like, does it run on Rails? Like, yes, it should. Like, because you can hire thousands of Rails developers in the world. Don't chase shiny objects like chasing things that no one has ever heard of on technology side. Not the right way to do it, because if this thing takes off, which I hope it does for you, you'll never be able to find enough people to keep maintaining it, right? So pick stuff that's like ubiquitous that everyone knows, like Django, Python, and Rails, and Ruby, and then you can build a big company, right? Like, but don't be in a huge rush to do it. Know you're solving the right problem, and if you don't have the patience to know you're solving the right problem, you definitely shouldn't do it. You shouldn't get on the journey to even think about doing it. The other thing is fundraising is not real life. What you read about in TechCrunch is not real life. None of that stuff is real life, right? Build real businesses, right, that have real technology, solving real problems, like real unit economics, real cash flow, like coming in. Like fundraising is the least real thing in the world. I think 2021 will tell you that. And what it feels like now in 2023 is like, there is no fairy godmother putting money under your pillow. Like it used to be venture capitalists, but it's not that anymore, right? And so save your teeth, right? And build a real business, right? And don't get wrapped up into funding rounds, because it's the furthest thing away from real life. I mean, 2021 was like, hey, I got an idea. Great. You want $1 billion? Yeah, that'd be great. Cool. When you wire it. Now all those companies are real suffering, right? Because they forgot the whole fundamental thing. Build a real company. Solve a real problem in this world. Everything good will happen after that.
I like
Thanks
that
for
a lot.
having me.
Yeah. Let's give a round of applause. And great questions, everyone. And definitely like make sure you connect with each other, like exchange some contact information. And
I'm on LinkedIn. Hit me on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn as well. And we'll send out another update email with some of our upcoming events, and love to see all of you again. So thanks again for coming out.
I had one last question.
Yeah, sure.
We had a plan.
Here, come walk with me. I'll get some water.
So it's about the